sort of almost everybody that you talk to would complain about. In Pakistan, we have, the establishment is not working with political hierarchy, and the political hierarchy is not working with the bureaucratic hierarchy. I think I can very happy to say this is one program where in the last 3-4 years, all the three hierarchies are 100% aligned, because I think there is a general understanding is that semiconductor is no longer an issue of economy only, which it is. You cannot have an economy without semiconductor, but it is an issue of sovereignty. Every chip, every electronic system, by definition, is hackable. Now, people say, what kind of stupid design is that? Why would you design something that is hackable? Well, it's not stupid design. Let's say you buy a cell phone and one day it stops working. You say, Dr. Shah, it's not working. You gave me the chip in it and it's not working. So what can I do? In order to avoid that, what I would do is I would build a system in the chip that nothing is working. I can apply something on a certain pin, a certain voltage, it can wake up the chip, and then I can figure out what's going on. I can fix it.
Watch Federal Post. Bold and independent.
Hello, assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Talking Politics. This is Hassan Zafar. I'm joined by Dr. Naveed Sherwani. Dr. Saab is a professor of semiconductors. He has designed the chips that are quite in talks today because the way China is taking the technological lead, and it has become a central point of discussion in geopolitics. So, Dr. Nadeem Sherwani Saab, thank you very much for joining us. Uh, Tell us more about your work. You have worked 45 years in academia. You have taught this subject, chip designing, and you have spent a lot of time in China since 1989. So, what else would you like to share with us?
Yeah, so I think in I started my career. My PhD was in a specific subject of how to automate chip design. It was back in mid 80s, and the idea really was that that was just the beginning of the chip design, that era. The question was, how do we make complicated chips? Back then, if you could even put, 100,000 transistors, which is the smallest element that we design on a chip, we would have been proud. And we could see at that time that, they'll become bigger and bigger. So from that 10,000, 20,000 transistors, today, we can put 100 billion transistors on a chip that is size of your thumb, right? Just the nail of your thumb, right? So that journey of automation, it would not be possible without computer aided design technology that me and many of my colleagues advanced. And that's what I have spent my life doing. And so for the first 10 years of my life, I was a professor. I wrote the first main textbook that was written on how to actually physically design a chip was written by me in 1989. Then I worked at Intel for 10 years, where I was responsible for working on very large microprocessors, Pentium being one of them. And then for the last 25 years, I have started 23 different chip design companies, some of them in US, some in China, and one in Korea. And they all do the same thing, design different kind of chips. So I've spent really, literally my whole life. My China exposure has been from since 89, as you mentioned, mainly originally because I used to recruit students from there, because most students in US were not interested in this subject because it is very mathematically intense, and it takes long time to become an expert on the subject. So most of the students used to come from China and India, which is still the case even today. And then these folks, as China started changing and its market started opening, it became clear that it is going to become one of the largest semiconductor market, not just from a production point of view, but from a consumption point of view. And that's the reason why we ended up starting some companies today. So that's kind of the brief history of my own development and my development with China.
So, Professor Saab, what is the state of affairs in Pakistan now? Why couldn't you recruit students from this country?
So I think in Pakistan, our uh, stop and go effort has also have a long history. And I think we started somewhere in mid 90s. The first attempt I made, there were one or two companies here who tried to actually design chips. Then we started, but I think it has been sort of what we call the brand Pakistan problem, and that has been where we would convince our boards that, oh, let's go to a design center in Pakistan, and then some event will happen, and then boards will say, oh, there's a geopolitical risk, you need to have insurance and things like that on your people who are traveling to Pakistan. That has held us back, but that's history. Last few years, I think we started a training program in Pakistan 2018. We trained the first set of about 200 engineers. That has now blossomed into around 1,000 people designing chips. There are about, I would say, close to 20, 25 companies. So it has been a turnaround. It has been a huge effort. Now the government has jumped into it. We have just approved a training program for a very large number of engineers, which is actually starting on July 1st. We are doing collaborative programs with Saudi Arabia. I actually lead that program in Saudi Arabia, where we are building 50 companies. I'm in charge of National Semiconductor Hub of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And the idea is, let's work collaboratively with Pakistan. We don't have people there. Let's train people in Pakistan and then have them work in Saudi Arabia, or Saudi Arabian companies will use the people. Saudi Arabia has capital and has a vision 2030. So we are part of that vision 2030. So these are some of the recent developments. I'm very hopeful. Anyway, I think we never give up. Pakistan is our mother, and you never
Yeah,
give up on your mother.
certainly. But has the government of Pakistan shown any interest in establishing the kind of institute in which we could uh, train these young people?
Oh,
And
absolutely. Yeah. I would say, I mean, sort of almost everybody that you talk to would complain about in Pakistan. We have, the establishment is not working with political hierarchy, and the political hierarchy is not working with the bureaucratic hierarchy. I think I can very happy to say this is one program where in the last 3, 4 years, all the three hierarchies are 100% aligned, because I think there is a general understanding is that semiconductor is no longer an issue of economy only, which it is. You cannot have an economy without semiconductor, but it is the issue of sovereignty. The countries which do not have control over own chips, their future will be dictated by somebody else who has
hmm,
control over their chips. And if you want to push a country back 10, 15, 20, 30 years, just start denying them the chips. You will see the impact on the country within 2, 3 years. Your cell phones won't work, your mobile networks won't work, your hospitals, schools, your banks, things will start crashing because software needs updating, hardware needs updating. So you could really, really play with the future of a country if you start denying them. So hence it's an issue of sovereignty, because it also plays into the defense of the country as well.
yes, yes, sir. I wanted you to talk a little bit more about it because we have recently seen in India Pakistan conflict, and then more recently Israel Iran war, that the technology, the control over your own cyberspace, these have emerged as very, very crucial areas in relation to your security and defense. So tell us a little bit more about it. How crucial it is to have your own internet system. Uh, do we really need to de-link ourselves from the American system, from Google Maps and all that, to be able to have control over our own cyberspace?
So, I mean, first, one people, something people have to understand:
Hmm.
every chip, every electronic system, by definition, is hackable. Now, people say, what kind of stupid design is that? Why would you design something that is hackable? Well, it's not stupid design. Let's say you buy a cell phone and one
Hmm.
day it stops working. You say, Dr. Shah, it's not working. You gave me the chip in it and it's not working. So what can
Hmm.
I do? In order for to avoid that, what I would do is I would build a system in the chip that nothing is working. I can apply something on a certain pin a certain voltage, it can wake up the chip, and then I can figure out what's going on. I can fix it. So, which means there is a certain way to enter the chip, mostly either for maintenance or doing some situation like that. That is exactly the same way nefarious elements can enter the chip, and it's true for all systems. It is
Hmm.
all electronic systems need to have a back door so that we can get in to fix things. This is a good intention. Well, unfortunately, the same back door can be used for bad intentions. So you
Hmm.
can quote me if you ask me this question: is there a way to completely secure an electronic system? The only way you can do it to unplug it. If it is absolutely no power and it is not connected to anything, that is the only way. That otherwise, in order to do something useful, it has to be connected to something electrically and and in terms of information exchange. So that's the first point. Now, if that is the case, your cell phone, your laptop, your camera, your home system, medical systems, everything is hackable.
Military
So the
hardware,
100%.
because from what I understand from your talk is that we have a choice. Either we can continue using the analog systems, the old days military hardware, and if we really mean to modernize the army, the air force, and all other things, we need to have these semiconductors somewhere in those systems. And to be able to protect it, what do we need to do, please?
Yes. So in order to protect, I think, and it's true for a civilian network. I mean, like a company, it be true for military or for the nation. You need to build a 6, 7 layer protection system, and the protection happens at the hardware level. I mean, it first starts with the personal level. Let's say you build the most secure person in the system in the world, but one person is compromised. One person who has all the information is compromised, and that person gives you the his own password and login information. Hence, no information would help. No system. So start there. You could have a breach at the personal level. You can have breach at the very basic network level. You can have a breach at the application level where Google Maps and things are working, so on and so forth. So there are many levels. There are about 7 levels of possible breach. So if you really want to create what I call sort of the golden dome of cybersecurity, you have to have these 7 layer. And in 7 layers, it's going to be a game of cat and mouse. You will strengthen that layer, and the nefarious elements will find a little back hole in your defense. Then you upgrade. When they attack, then you fix it. Then they attack again, you fix it. And so this is a situation where you have these 7 layers, and all 7 layers have to be, you constantly upgrade, and as more and more attacks come. So this is not something that you can just buy one time and say, okay, I'm the secure now, I'm all done, khalas. That, unfortunately, it's a cat and mouse game, and that's how it has to be played.
Okay, we saw that the Indian system during Operation Sindoor, it was hacked by Pakistani hackers. Their cybersecurity had several vulnerabilities as we uh, experienced it on their part. We also heard the absence of certain codes in their Rafale jets, uh, due to which they could not mount any modern arsenals on them. So, and I don't know, I don't want to speak about any vulnerabilities on our part, but so these are very, very serious issues in terms of national security. Uh, even government websites, if they can be hacked by the enemy side, it can cause very, very serious damage because we have very critical data. Nadra, for example, how secure, how can we ensure absolute security is these 7 layers? Do we have institutions in Pakistan that are preparing young people to contribute to this kind of security, or do we really need to make a serious effort in that direction?
So the first good news is that we are not unprepared. We had, first of all, an understanding that this is an important area, and we have invested in this area. So, cybersecurity has two aspects: the offensive aspect and the defensive aspect. I think your first comments were all about the offensive side of that. And now your question is about the defensive side of that.
True.
So, I think in both areas, I think we have made good progress. But I don't think as a nation, we have the kind of regulations. Like, for example, we should have a regulation for all banks that you must have, by law, this much level of security. Hospitals should have certain level of security. So we don't have that kind of regulatory infrastructure, right? And I think no nation has that today. United States does not have, China, nobody has that. So in that sense, almost everybody is vulnerable. Now
Hmm.
everybody's waking up because of these three, four things that have happened. I think Ukraine has demonstrated that how a small nation can stand up to a large nation on the basis of cyber offensive capabilities. I think Pakistan India situation was something similar. I think in Iran Israel standoff, we could see that Iran has was subject of offensive cybersecurity from Israel. And I think, as far as preparedness of Pakistan is concerned, I think maybe our military institutions and certain critical institutions, I believe, are well protected. I don't believe as a nation we are well protected. I think we do
Hmm.
need to have a nationwide plan. And I think, as I said earlier, this is a game in which every year we should say, okay, this year the companies, the military, and all the different infrastructure has to now abide by this rule. You need to have a layer 3 security protocol. Now you have to buy this new server and you have to do this next year. Every year you have to keep on making a list of vulnerabilities you learned last year, make new laws and new protocols, and keep on upgrading. And unfortunately, this is the only way, I think. And my assessment again in Pakistan is some institutions in Pakistan are well protected, but as a nation, we do not have the regulatory framework that we need. And I think a lot of work is needed in that direction.
Now, tell us little bit about personal data also. The emails, what the use of WhatsApp. We heard in the United States, the Secretary of State and the National Security Advisor, they were sharing critical information in a WhatsApp group which got leaked. So that was a serious breach. So, but on the other hand, we know China, they're using WeChat, which apparently is very exclusive to China, to the Chinese, and it is believed to be quite well protected. Do we need to have something of our own like that?
Yeah, I think, first of all, there should be no reason to share your national data with any non national entity, regardless. Why should we? Right? And WhatsApp is not an amazing piece of software that cannot be written. Right? And it can even be mandated, right? We could say for the national security reason, we have decided there is something called PakChat, and PakChat everybody has to use if you are going to be in Pakistan, and that's what. Now, what will then happen is at least your data, encrypted or uncrypted, is still sitting on Pakistani servers, right?
Hmm.
Let's say whatever encryption date WhatsApp is using, it can also be subjected to first layer of infiltration, meaning one person in your WhatsApp group gets compromised. One person. That's exactly what happened in the case of US. One person happened to be a news reporter. Somehow, because his name was similar to somebody else, they included him in the word, which is a serious breach. If you think about that, WhatsApp doesn't check the identity of the person. Is this the person that you wanted? As long as you put the name of the person, it just creates a group. And even at the security level of United States, nobody asked the question, are these people have the security clearance that is needed? WhatsApp has no such system in there. Neither does WeChat. In WeChat, if you have the account ID, you can just include a person. But what you need for security, you create a group. Everybody should have a certain security clearance. and the software should check, is this person allowed to join this group or not? But let's say assume that me and you are starting a group for your own family, right? And you put
Right.
10 names together and start a group. Should we not check that the 10 people in this group actually do belong to your family? And by mistake, you have not added somebody who is not really a friend of your enemy, that you of your family. So a
So,
simple example like that tells you how unsecure WhatsApp is. It doesn't even check who is joining. And right now, and then how do we know that that ID has not been provided to somebody else? So these are simple things that can happen to any of the systems we have. So unfortunately, that tells you that how fragile all these systems are. But at the very basic level, a nation should control its own data. It's unforgivable that a military leaders of a nation are using a system where the data is going somewhere else outside the nation. That should never happen, first of all. And the private citizens should not really be using a system like that. I don't think it's wise. Why
leaders
should we do that?
of bureaucracy, uh, people holding public office, uh, nobody in any serious position should be using this kind of platform where the data is being stored outside of your country, and anybody else can have access to that data. We how do we compare United States and China in this race of technology, and
I
because they
think
are.
my opinion about technology is there are component which is related to innovation, and there's a component related to deployment.
Hmm,
In United States is very good at innovation, free exchange of ideas, having amazing institutions, uh, people coming and going from all over the world coming to. It's actually all beautiful. It all works. It falls down when you have to actually deploy the technology. In a democratic system, it takes centuries for people to agree on simple things. As a result, you have a great technology, you know it's a great technology, but now I give you an example. During COVID in Bay Area, in San Francisco Bay Area, we have like maybe 30, 40 cities. In one city, the rule was you have to wear the mask. In the very next city, no mask. The very next city, you have to have a mask, and so forth. Simple thing like that we cannot agree upon. We Now it was clear that masks would help, but cities could not agree on that. Now think about high-speed train. Does country like Germany has high school? Yeah, of course they invented that most of the high-speed train. But which country actually deployed the high-speed train? Because see, deployment requires top-down understanding that guys, we have decided to do this technology now. Let's. So when you talk about technological development of the country, you are mostly talking about the deployment part of it, because that's what you see. If you have amazing things in labs, that you have beautiful things you have created, but an ordinary person is not really benefiting from that, what good is that technology? So I think where China differs from United States is not in the innovation side. I think they're catching up on the innovation side. But I think where they differ massively from United States is in the deployment of technology. They have taken technology, they have improved their cities. Their cities are indeed smart cities. You look at their traffic, you look at uh, their hospitals, they look at their factories, you look at everything in China is smarter.
Hmm,
Everything. Why? Because it can be mandated. Like, for example, if you look at high speed train, some years ago, 15 years ago, they concluded that it would never be possible for poor people to actually use airplanes, because airplanes at the end of the day is a metal tube which carries 200 people. It will always be a metal tube because there is no fundamental way to make an aircraft which has 10,000 people in it, right?
hmm,
So they said, well, let's make an aircraft which has 10,000 people in it that looks like a high speed train. They have
hmm.
spent close to $1 trillion, even more, to actually do that because they care about poor people having affordability, transportation
What about
all
it?
over the China, and they have done that.
Yeah,
right? So
this
I
is
think this is
understandable.
where I think China differed from United States in terms of deployment of technology.
But you are saying that in terms of innovation, China is still trying to catch up, but is not ahead of the United States. Is that true?
No, I won't say that. I would say that in some areas they are ahead of United States. In some areas they are behind, and in some areas they are far ahead.
Uh,
I'll give you an example. In
identify.
US,
Can you identify the areas in which they are far ahead?
sure, sure, sure. So,
Yes.
for example, I mean, if you look in the area of artificial intelligence, right?
Hmm.
Artificial intelligence actually is today is a game of how many people you have who have STEM education, how many PhDs you have who understand mathematics, because it is complex math. At the end of the day, what we are doing is actually the algorithms are very similar to what we had 30 years ago. It is the ability of refining those algorithms and using the modern compute and memory to apply to these massive data sets. So if you look at China as the largest data set in the world because of the system they have, shareable, enormous amount of data. They have huge amount of compute. They can build even more. And then they have the largest pool of PhDs and STEM, and they produce more PhDs every year than the rest of the world combined. So this
True.
formula is putting them ahead in these areas. In the areas where you have to take a few smart, bright people and come up with something completely new, which is completely very different, those are the areas where I think China still struggles because they're having talent from all over the world coming together, having free expression and mixing of different universities and public sector and all that helps. I believe that's where they struggle. But whenever a well defined area is picked up and you can put some policy, then China actually does. AI is an example of that. Semiconductor is an area they are behind. And the reason for that they are behind is because there was no need to advance because they could just buy it from the West. They could buy it from Taiwan. They could buy it from Korea and seemed like there is no need to do it. But now
Hmm.
they cannot buy it because the West is trying to choke them. So now they're saying, so you will see the results in 3 to 5 years that now that we put, I typically say there was a sleeping little cat on the corner in semiconductors. It was happy cat. Now we go poke the cat, and now that cat has become a roaring tiger. Now we'll have to deal with the roaring tiger. And that's what has happened in the semiconductor that we have a roaring tiger, and tigers are tigers. So that's what we have now.
Yes, yes. You also, I'm sure you must have closely watched the war between Iran and Israel, and there was so much hype about Israeli technology. But when it comes out in the open, in the real battlefield, how do you compare Israeli technology in relation to other countries like Iran, for example? They have shown immense capability of their hypersonic missiles and all that.
Yeah, so I think there are 3 or 4 areas in which Iran was able to demonstrate something very, very substantial, I think. So I think, first of all, Iran not having an air force because they had no access to any modern aircraft, that's where the a negative battlefield started. So, day one, if you look at the two countries, one country has air force, a world class air force, and the other country has no air force. So, that's where, and that's why now, in that scenario, that even Iran putting up a fight is a win, right? I mean, most nations would have given up because if air superiority belongs to somebody else and they can randomly bomb anywhere, that would be the case. So I think the areas where we saw brilliance from Iran, I think, first of all, as you correctly pointed out, they do have hypersonic missiles which have the capability to break through the multiple layered air defense system of Israel, which was a shock to Israel. I believe Israel did not expect that Iran has such technology, and they now good for them is Iran did not deploy too many of those. I do not know understand the reason of the restraint, but whatever geopolitical considerations they had not to deploy to, but they did show us a glimpse that if they do deploy, what happens. Devastating. They are very large. They can penetrate, and I think that's an area Tehran has done very well. I think the second area where Iran did very well is in the area of offensive cybersecurity. They were able to hack into several Israeli systems and create a lot of panic there, which, that's the purpose of cybersecurity. And so I think there were multiple instances that Israel, even being the leader of cybersecurity in the world, and that shows you the nature of cybersecurity, by the way, that they are some of the top cybersecurity firms in the world, and yet the Iranian cybersecurity folks were able to hack through and identify some weaknesses and vulnerabilities in the short time and demonstrate their capability. I think those were kind of the shining examples where Iran was able to outwit Israel.
Thank you so much, Dr. Naveed Sherwani sir,
Thank you,
and thank you.
thank you, Dr. Zafar. It was my pleasure. And anytime you would like to have more details or any other aspect of
I
this
will.
field, I will be.
Thank you very much for watching now. Khuda Hafiz, Pakistan Zindabad.